The Last Candle. Japanese Ghost Stories for Sleep. Episode 9. 10 Stories, Told Slowly, by Candlelight. Tonight's 10 stories. The Grateful Crane. The Mirror of Matsuyama. The Tongue-Cut Sparrow. The Cauldron of Kibitsu. The Spirit of the Gold. The Crabs of the Heike. At Yaidzu, the Swimmer among the Dead. Fragment, the Mountain of Skulls. Tanabata, the Weaver Star, and the Fireflies of the Uji River. Good evening. And welcome back, to The Last Candle. 19 candles are burning tonight. Only 19. 80 stories lie behind us, and the room is nearly all shadow now, warm shadow, story-soaked, the gentlest darkness in the world. If you are new here, the rule is old and simple. 100 candles, one story for each, and the 100th story never told, so that the last candle may burn on, and keep us all safe in its glow. Tonight, the loves and loyalties of the old tales, a crane who repaid a kindness, a mother who lives in a mirror, a sparrow with a grudge and a heart, the crabs who carry the faces of a drowned clan, and above everything, all night long, the 2 stars who crossed the river of heaven once a year to meet. You need not stay awake. The candles will keep count for you. Let us begin. Story 1. The Grateful Crane. Our first story tonight is one of the most beloved in all Japan, the tale of the Grateful Crane. It is a story about kindness repaid, and about a promise, and a door, and, like the best of the old tales, it will not end quite the way comfort would like it to, and will comfort you more deeply for that. In the deep snow country there lived a young man named Yohio, poor as winter, kind as bread. And one freezing evening, crossing the fields, he found a crane caught in a hunter's snare, a great white crane, beating its wings against the cord, wearing itself to death with terror. And Yohio knelt in the snow and loosed the cord and stood back, and the crane rose, circled him once, twice, with a long low cry, and swept away into the falling white. That very night, at his door, a knock. And there in the storm stood a young woman, white-faced and lovely, snow in her black hair, lost, she said, and cold. He took her in, of course, he had 1 fire and half a supper, and gave her the better share of both. And she stayed. Winter is long, hearts are quick, before the thaw they were married. Yohio and his Tsu, the gentlest wife in the snow country, come to him from nowhere out of the storm. They were poor, and she saw it grieved him. So one evening she said, I will weave for you. Set up the old loom in the back room, but promise me this one thing, while I weave, you must never look in. Never. Do you promise? And he promised, easily, the way we promise when we do not know we are being weighed. All night the loom sounded, tunkare, tunkare, a sound like a heartbeat spinning, and in the morning she came out pale and tired, with a bolt of cloth in her arms such as no one in that province had ever seen, white as first snow, soft as breath, woven through with a shimmer like moonlight on feathers. It sold in the town for more money than Yohio had touched in his life. And the cloth merchant said, bring me another. You see the shape of it now. Again she wove, and came out paler, again the money, and the merchant wanting more, and Yohio, not a greedy man, the tale is careful to say, only a poor one, with poverty's long hunger in his bones, asked a third time. And a third time she looked at him a long moment, and said only, this will be the last one. And remember your promise. And went in, and shut the door, and the loom began. It went on too long, that third weaving. 2 nights. 3. The sound grew slower, kare. With long silences between, like a tired heart. And Yohio stood at the door, sick with worry and with something else he could not name, and the merchant's voice in one ear, and the winter's in the other, and he opened the door. At the loom sat no woman. A crane sat there, a great white crane, gaunt, half bare, weaving the last of the cloth from its own breast feathers, pulling them one by one with its beak, each one a thread of moonlight, its blood dotting the white like tiny plum blossoms. It turned its head and looked at him, with her eyes, and there was no anger in them at all. Only the oldest sadness there is, the sadness of being seen. You know me now, she said, and she was Tsu again, standing thin and white by the loom with the finished cloth in her arms. I am the crane you saved. I came to repay you, and I stayed because I loved you, which was not in the plan. I could be your wife exactly as long as you did not know. That is the one law of my people. It is not a punishment, Yohio. It is only, how it is. The door you open does not close. She laid the last cloth in his hands. Keep this one, sell the others but keep this one, it is my feathers and my heart, and went out into the snow. And from the yard a great white crane rose, thin and ragged-winged, circled the little house once, twice, with a long low cry, exactly the cry he had heard in the snare field a year ago, and never once thought of since, and flew away over the mountains, and was gone. The tale does not curse Yohio, and neither will we. He asked one time too many and looked one time too soon, which is to say he was human, in winter, in Japan, 400 years ago, and every listener by every hearth since has known perfectly well they would have opened the door too. The grandmothers drew the moral gently, everything that loves you has a room you must not look into, a place where the feathers come from, and love is not owning the whole of a person. It is warming yourself, gratefully, at what they choose to bring out. Yohio kept the last cloth all his life, they say, never sold it at any price, slept under it in winter, and old travelers through that country used to tell of a small house in the snowfields where, on storm nights, a single crane would land in the yard a while, and stand in the lamplight from the window, and neither ask nor be asked anything, 2 old friends, the tellers said, keeping what could be kept. Keep what can be kept, then, and let sleep have the rest. Somewhere the loom is quiet now, the last cloth is folded, the crane stands in the warm light from a window, at peace, owing and owed nothing. The snow falls soft on the snow country, Tunkare. Tunkare. Slower, slower. Sleep well. The story of the grateful crane is told. One more candle goes out. 18 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 2. The Mirror of Matsuyama. Our second story is the tenderest ghost story in Japan. If it is a ghost story at all, you shall judge. It comes from the province of Echigo, on the snowy western coast, and it is called the Mirror of Matsuyama. In the days when mirrors were rare and wonderful things, a man of Matsuyama traveled to the capital on business, and brought back gifts, for his little daughter, sweets and a doll, and for his wife, a mirror, a round mirror of polished silver bronze, with pine and cranes on its back, the first that had ever come to their village. The wife, who had never seen one, looked into it and started, "Husband, there is a beautiful woman in this thing. She looks at me when I look, and she smiles when I smile." And he laughed and said, "That is your own face, foolish and dear. The capital is full of such wonders." And she blushed, and treasured it, and, being a modest woman of the old style, put it away in its lacquered case, and looked at it only rarely, as one visits a treasure. Years passed, good and ordinary. The daughter grew tall and kind, the image of her mother, everyone said so, and the mirror slept in its case, mostly forgotten. And then, as happens, sickness came to the house, and the mother knew before anyone that she would not recover. So one evening she called her daughter, and put the lacquered case into her hands, and told her, in a voice already half over the border, this: "When I am gone, and you miss me, take out this mirror, and look into it. You will see me there. Not sad, not sick, young and well, and looking straight back at you. Whenever your heart is too heavy, come to the mirror, and I will come to meet you. It will always be so. I promise." And she died. And the girl, who had never in her life seen a mirror, and did not know what one was, did exactly as her mother had said. In the worst hour of her grief she opened the case with shaking hands, and looked, and cried out with joy. For there was her mother. Young, well, unmarked by illness, exactly as promised, looking straight back at her with brimming eyes, mouthing the very words the girl herself was whispering. She pressed her forehead to the cold bronze and wept, and the mother in the mirror wept with her, in perfect time, which proved, the girl thought, how completely her mother still felt everything she felt. And from that day she visited the mirror every morning and every evening, told it her days, showed it her sewing, asked it questions and read the answers in its face, and grew, on this diet of impossible comfort, not stranger but kinder, gentler, more patient, for she was being raised, she believed, still, by her mother, and she behaved accordingly. Now the tale, in its wisdom, sends trouble. The father married again, and the new wife, finding the girl whispering over a hidden case twice daily, decided she was being cursed. In the old world one assumed witchcraft the way we assume fever, and went to the husband in fear and anger. And the truth had to come out. The girl, questioned, said simply, with shining eyes, "It is no curse. It is my mother. She promised she would be in the mirror, and she is. I see her every day. Come. I will show you." And here is the moment the story has been keeping. The father looked into the mirror over his daughter's shoulder, and understood everything, the promise, the innocence, the years of it. She sees her own face, he thought, and does not know it, she has grown so like her mother that the mirror keeps the promise perfectly. And he opened his mouth to explain, and did not. Wisely, gently, forever, he did not. He said only, yes. That is your mother. You honor her well. And the stepmother, who was not wicked, only frightened, looked too, and wept, and loved the girl from that day, and the household healed around a mirror and a kindness. Was the mother in the mirror? The tale, politely, declines to rule, but it tips its hand, I think, in the promise itself. You will see me there, she said, knowing what the child would see, knowing the girl had her face, knowing that every year the likeness would only deepen. It was not a trick. It was the truest thing she knew, I am in you. Look at yourself, and find me. She simply said it in the one language a grieving child could believe. And so the girl of Matsuyama grew old with her mother in the house all her life, in the mirror, in her own widening smile, in the kindness she practiced because her mother was watching, which is, when you think about it, exactly how the dead do stay, not behind us in the dark, but ahead of us in the glass, aging along with us, meeting us every morning. If you have such a face in your keeping, and nearly everyone does, it is there tonight, closer than breath, needing no lacquered case. The promise holds all around, nothing loved is lost, it is only relocated, to mirrors, to mannerisms, to the particular way you say good night. Say it now, then, to everyone in your glass, the seen and the unseen, the here and the herein, and let the case close softly on all of them till morning. The mirror is bright. The promise is kept. Sleep well. The story of the mirror of Matsuyama is told. One more candle goes out. 17 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 3. The Tongue-Cut Sparrow. Our third story is one of the 5 great folk tales of Japan, told to every child for 4 centuries, the story of the tongue-cut sparrow. It has a wound in it, as the title admits, but only a small one, quickly mended, and the rest is hospitality, and 2 baskets, and the oldest choice in the world. There was once a gentle old man who kept a pet sparrow, a bright, sociable little bird he had found injured and nursed, who ate from his hand and rode his shoulder to the fields and chattered to him all day like a tiny gossiping neighbor. The old man had no children, the sparrow was his darling, and his wife, the tale is sorry to say, was a sour, sharp-tongued woman who begrudged even a bird its rice. One day, while the old man was in the fields, the sparrow hopped into the kitchen and ate a paste of starch the old woman had set out for her laundry. It was hardly a spoonful. But the old woman flew into a rage, caught the little bird, and cut its tongue, and drove it out into the sky, crying, "Go back to your mountains, thief." The old man came home to a silent house and a terrible story, and did not shout, he was not a shouting man, but took his stick that very hour and went into the hills, calling as he walked, "Sparrow, sparrow, where is my tongue-cut sparrow?" Through bamboo groves and over streams, asking the woodcutters, asking the very trees, an old man calling a bird, mile after mile, because a small thing he loved had been heard in his house and he could not bear it. And at dusk, deep in a bamboo grove, the sparrow flew out to meet him, whole and well, for sparrow folk have their own medicine, and it was not only a sparrow now, or perhaps it never had been. It bowed, and welcomed him in human speech to the sparrow's inn, and there among the green bamboo stood a house of reeds and blossoms, full of the sparrow's family, who had heard everything, and who received the old man like a lord, fed him, sang to him, danced for him the famous sparrow dance, and thanked him, over and over, for a lifetime of crumbs and kindness. When he rose to leave, his wife would worry, he said, which was generous of him. They brought out 2 baskets of woven cane, one large and heavy, one small and light. Choose, they said, whichever you wish, our gratitude is in both. And the old man bowed and said, I am old, and the road is long, and I have done nothing to earn much. The small one, if I may. And he carried it home, and opened it with his wife by the lamp, and it was full of gold, and silver, and rolls of silk, and coral, and treasures uncountable, the sparrow's whole heart, packed in the humble basket, because they had known perfectly well which one he would choose. You can write the next part yourself, and the tale knows it, and hurries. The old woman demanded the way to the sparrow's inn, and stumped off up the hills with greed lighting her like a lantern, was received courteously, for sparrows are polite even to their maimers, refused all refreshment, demanded the baskets, seized the large and heavy one, and staggered off without a word of thanks. Halfway home, in the dark of the mountains, the basket grew too heavy to bear, and, sure her fortune was doubled, she opened it. And out came, the tale is gleeful here, and the children always shriek, goblins and horrors, a 3-eyed thing, a long-necked thing, toads and imps and a serpent, all boiling up out of the basket to hiss and gibber at her, and she fled shrieking down the mountain, unharmed but thoroughly unstuffed of her greed, and arrived home a changed woman. And, this is the part worth keeping, the tale lets her change. She was ashamed, she begged pardon of the old man and, in some versions, of the sparrow itself, and she ended her days gentle, the story says, feeding the birds at the kitchen door. The old commentators loved the architecture of this tale, 2 travelers, 1 road, 1 inn, 1 choice, and the baskets, mark you, were identical in offer. The sparrows cursed no one. They simply packed each basket with the chooser's own heart, and let the mountain do the arithmetic. What you carry home from the world, the tale says, is what you reached for. The modest hand comes home light and rich, the grasping hand comes home heavy with its own goblins. It is the fairest magic in folklore, and it is still in operation. But the tenderest thing in the story is not the gold at all. It is the old man on the mountain paths, calling. That is why the sparrows emptied their treasury, not for the crumbs, the years of crumbs, but because when their small one was hurt, somebody human came looking. All the wealth in the tale is just that image, cashed out, love that goes up the mountain after what it loves. The sparrow's inn is still up there somewhere, the grandmother said, deep in the bamboo, lit and busy, receiving the kind, and every small creature you have ever fed knows the way to it, and reports. So choose the small basket tonight, as you always meant to, the light load, the enough. It is being packed for you now in the green dark of the bamboo, and it is heavier with good than it looks, it always is. The lanterns of the inn are going out one by one, the sparrow dance is done, the road home is downhill and moonlit all the way. Sleep well. The story of the tongue-cut sparrow is told. One more candle goes out. 16 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 4. The Cauldron of Kibitsu. Our fourth story is the dark jewel of tonight, for even this late in the 100, we owe the old game one true shiver. It is from the tales of moonlight and rain, and it is called the Cauldron of Kibitsu, and it begins, as the deepest Japanese ghost stories do, with a wronged and faithful woman. At the great shrine of Kibitsu, in Okayama, there was practiced from ancient times a rite of divination, the singing cauldron. Before a marriage, the priests would boil water in the shrine's huge iron cauldron, and if the union was blessed, the cauldron would sing, a deep, sweet, bell-like drone, like a bull roar of good fortune. And if the cauldron kept silent, the marriage was cursed, and wise families withdrew. Now a marriage was proposed between Isora, the shrine priest's daughter, devout, lovely, patient as water, and one Shotaro, the son of a rich farming house, handsome, charming, and rotten, a man of the pleasure quarters whose parents hoped a good wife would settle him. The families met, the omens were taken, the water boiled, and the cauldron of Kibitsu made no sound at all. Silence, wall to wall. And the parents, having already set their hearts, explained it away. The priests must have erred, they said. Some impurity in the fire. And the marriage went forward over the cauldron's silence, which is the old world's way of saying, over the plain warning of heaven. Isora was a perfect wife. The tale insists on it with something like anger, dutiful to his parents, gentle to him, early rising, uncomplaining. And Shotaro repaid her within the year by taking up with a woman of the post town, one Sodi, and then, when his father locked him up for it, by weeping to Isora that he was reformed, begging her to pawn her own robes and mirror to fund one last honest venture, and taking the money, and running away with Sodi, laughing, to another province. Isora sickened. Betrayed twice over, robbed politely, by a weeping face she loved, she declined like a moon, and died before the year turned. And in the post towns of the next province, meanwhile, Sodi, the other woman, who had wronged Isora without ever meeting her, fell suddenly ill, raving that something cold stood by her pillow, and died in a week. The neighbors whispered. Shotaro, twice bereaved and beginning, at last, to be afraid, met a courteous stranger at Sodi's grave who took him home to console him, and the widow of that house, seen by lamplight, lovely and pale, turned to greet him, and it was Isora, white as her grave clothes, with eyes he fled from screaming into the night. He ran to a diviner, and the diviner, hearing the tale, went grey, and said, "The dead woman's wrath is at its full tide, you should have heard the cauldron. One hope only. Shut yourself in your house for 42 days, the full term of her power, with these charms on every door and window, and though she rage outside, do not open, and do not so much as show her an inch of yourself, until the last day is done at dawn." And so began the siege, the most famous 42 nights in Japanese literature. Every evening at dusk, the voice began outside, sometimes weeping, so piteously that his hand would be on the bolt before he caught himself, sometimes raging, shaking the eaves, sometimes, worst of all, sweetly calling his name in the voice of the young bride at the lamp. The vermilion charms on the doors glowed faintly through those nights, the tale says, like coals holding a fire back. And Shotaro crouched in the dark inner room, counting, 40 nights, 41, and on the last evening, the voice did not come at all, and the night passed in blessed silence, and toward morning the darkness at the window's crack turned gray, dawn. 42 nights done. He tore the charms from the door and flung it open, weeping with relief, calling to his neighbor across the way that it was over. And it was not dawn. It was the false light before dawn, that gray lie the sky tells an hour early, and the last night of the 42 still had an hour to run. The neighbor, hearing a single terrible cry, ran out with a lantern, and found the door open, and the house empty, and Shotaro nowhere at all, except, on the wall beside the door, running down it, fresh, and, hanging from the eave above, caught as if dropped there, a man's topknot of hair. Nothing else. The tale ends in 3 lines of masterly quiet. They searched at daybreak, nothing further was ever found, and the fame of the Cauldron of Kibitsu, which had known and said nothing false, grew greater than ever. It is the most frightening of the old stories, and yet notice, as the Edo commentators did, how exactly moral its terror is. The cauldron warned, greed overrode it. The wife gave everything, the husband pawned it. Heaven granted him 42 nights of mercy he had not earned, and a clear rule, and he broke it an hour early, cheating at the very end as he had cheated all his life. Isora took nothing that was not, by then, entirely owed. The horror of the tale is really just its bookkeeping. And you, listener, have nothing in that ledger to fear. You have kept your nights honestly, or you would not be here among the gentle stories, letting an old cauldron judge you. Let it, for a moment, listen, deep and sweet, under the rain and the dark, the drone of good fortune. The cauldron sings for the faithful. It is singing now. 42 nights are nothing to you, you need only this one, and it is guarded, every charm in place, every door of you shut soft, and the true dawn, the honest one, already on its way with no lies in it. Sleep through the gray hour. Sleep through every hour. The cauldron sings. Sleep well. The story of the Cauldron of Kibitsu is told. One more candle goes out. 15 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 5. The Spirit of the Gold. Our 5th story is the strangest thing in the tales of Moonlight and Rain, a ghost story in which the ghost is money. The old title means something like, a debate on poverty and wealth, but we shall call it the Spirit of the Gold, for that is what it is, the night a man's savings sat up and talked to him. In the North Country there lived a samurai named Oka Sanai, a hard, careful, unfashionable man. In an age when warriors held money to be faintly shameful, a thing for merchants, beneath the dignity of the sword, Sanai saved. Methodically, unapologetically, coin by coin, for years. His fellow samurai mocked him for it. He declined to hear them, and every night, it was his habit, his one luxury, to take out his box of gold and set the coins in ranks by the lamp, and review them, as a general reviews troops. And one night, past the middle of the hour of the rat, as he sat over his ranked and shining gold, something in the lamplight moved. And there, sitting across the coins from him, was a tiny old man, no taller than a sword guard is wide, dressed with antique formality, with a face like a very small, very ancient, very respectable moon. "Do not be alarmed," said the visitor, in a voice like coins counted softly. "I am the spirit of your gold. It has been so long and so honorable a household, I thought I would call." Another man would have fled or prayed. Sanai, and this is why the gold loved him, poured his guest a thimble of sake and said, "You are welcome. I have questions." And so, across the ranked coins, deep into the night, man and money talked, the only conversation of its kind in literature. Sanai asked the great bitter question of every honest man: why does wealth so often gather to the wicked, and flee the good? Is gold evil, as the priests hint? Does it corrupt whoever holds it? And the little spirit, sipping, considering, gave the answer the whole tale exists to deliver. "You wrong us," he said. "Gold has no morals and no memory, we are rain. We fall where the ground is made to catch us, on the frugal, the attentive, the early rising, be they saints or scoundrels. The wicked rich were not made wicked by us, they were wicked catchers of rain. And the virtuous poor are not punished, they have simply dug no cistern, some because they are careless, and some, the finest ones, because they are busy carrying water to others. Do not read a man's soul from his purse," said the spirit of the gold. "We are the worst possible witnesses to character. We only testify to habits." "But," said the tiny gentleman, and here he stood and bowed, "there is one thing we do notice, and it is why I have come. It is how we are regarded. The wicked hoarder loves us as flesh, and we feel soiled. The wastrel despises us, and we feel flung. But a man who sets us in ranks by lamplight, who neither worships nor squanders, but husbands, who treats money as what it is, stored labor, other men's sweat and his own, deserving neither shrines nor contempt but stewardship, in such a house," said the spirit, "we rest. I have been comfortable here 30 years, Oka Sanai. I came to say thank you." No spirit in Japanese letters ever paid a homelier compliment. They talked till the sky grayed, of economies and provinces, of why misers die poor in everything else, of the coming age. The spirit predicted, accurately, that money would inherit the earth from the sword, and was rather sad about it, and at first light the little old man bowed once more, stepped in among the ranked coins, and was simply gold again, quiet and bright, all the way across the floor. Sanai told the story himself in his old age, they say, always with the same dry ending. People ask if I dreamed it. Certainly I dreamed it. And my gold heard every word. He lived long, prospered exactly as much as he intended to and no more, and was famous for 2 things, never lending at interest to a friend, and never refusing rice to a neighbor. The rain, he liked to say, taught me where to fall. The Edo readers loved this tale because it took the age's guiltiest anxiety, money, and sat it down by the lamp, and made peace with it. Not worship, not renunciation, stewardship. Your savings, the story proposes, are a quiet guest in the house, feed them regularly, respect their nature, expect no love from them and no evil either, and they will sit up with you, on the long nights, like company. It is oddly good doctrine for the hour of sleep, when money worry does its worst prowling. Whatever your ranks of coins look like tonight, long or short, and most of the worlds are short, they are only rain and habits, testifying to nothing about your soul. The finest people, the Spirit himself said, are often busy carrying water. Set the ledger down. It does not judge you, and tonight it cannot even be read in the dark. The little gentleman has stepped back in among the coins, the box is shut, the lamp is out. Everything in your house, the owed and the owned, the spent and the saved, is asleep now, resting comfortably, well regarded. Be the last thing in the house to close. Sleep well. The story of the spirit of the gold is told. One more candle goes out. 14 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 6. The Crabs of the Heike. Our sixth story is about the saddest crabs in the world. If you have been with us since the second night of the 100, you have heard of the Heike, the great clan destroyed at sea, whose blind singer Hoichi we met long ago. Tonight, the strangest and gentlest chapter of their long afterlife, the Heike crabs. 700 years ago, at Dan no Yura, in the straits between the great islands of Japan, the Heike clan met the Genji in the last sea battle of a long war, and were annihilated. Warriors, ladies, courtiers, and the child emperor Antoku, 7 years old, whose grandmother took him in her arms and stepped with him into the sea rather than surrender, a whole imperial world went into the water in an afternoon. The straits, the chronicles say, were red until the tide turned twice. And ever after, this is fact, and you may verify it with any fisherman of Shimonoseki, or any biologist, the crabs of those waters have carried on their backs the face of a samurai. It is true. The species is real, scholars call it Hykiopsis japonica, the Heike crab, and on every shell, molded in ridges, is a scowling human face, the frown, the glaring eyes, the grim downturned mouth of a warrior in his last extremity. The fishermen of the straits have never eaten them. When the Heike crabs come up in the nets, they are spoken to politely, "Honored sirs, your pardon," and return to the sea. For everyone has always known who they are. The old belief said it plainly, the spirits of the drowned Heike, too proud to dissolve, took what vessels the sea offered, and the crabs of Dan no Yura, which walked the bottom of the very straits where the clan went down, became the clan, each shell a warrior's face, each sideways march a patrol, the whole sea floor of that channel an encampment of the loyal dead, keeping watch over the place where the little emperor sank, forever. The details the fishermen added over the centuries are wonderfully particular. The crabs muster thickest, they say, in the 4th month, the anniversary of the battle. They are bad-tempered when netted, of course they are being interrupted on duty, and calm when released facing the deep channel, where the child went down. And on the night of the great Bon festival, when the dead of all Japan come home, the fishermen of the straits do not fish at all, out of courtesy, for the water that night is full of lanterns set floating for the Heike, and, moving out beneath the lanterns, in from all the reaches of the strait, the crabs. Hearn, who told Hoichi's story, was haunted by the crabs. He kept one's shell on his writing desk, and he drew from them the observation that makes them belong to a sleep channel and not a tragedy. Of all the forms grief and pride have taken in the world's folklore, he wrote, this may be the most successful. Not wailing ghosts, not burning phantom ships, the terrible Heike chose to become something small, armored, patient, and almost comic, something children point at in wonder, something the fishermen greet. 7 centuries on, every other combatant of that war is dust and footnotes, and the Heike are still there, still in uniform, still glaring, and everyone is fond of them. For that is the odd grace of it, the faces on the shells are furious, and the feeling they produce, in everyone who has ever held one, is tenderness. The scowl of the drowned warrior, shrunk to the size of a coin and carried meekly along the seafloor for 700 years, stops being terror and becomes devotion. They did not haunt anyone. They just refused to leave their post. There are worse things to do with eternity than patrol, in miniature, the waters where your emperor sleeps. Modern science, told all this, smiles and speaks of selection. Fishermen for centuries threw back the crabs whose shells looked most face-like, it suggests, and so the sea bred ever better faces, to which the fishermen of Shimonoseki reply, with perfect logic, yes, and why did we throw them back? Because they are the Heike. Science and legend, for once, hold hands. The faces are on the shells because human beings, for 700 years, kept faith with a defeated clan. Either way you tell it, it is a story about mercy compounding. The little emperor has a shrine at the straits now, and the drowned clan are its guardians in perpetuity, and once a year the lanterns go out on the water in their thousands, red and gold, drifting seaward on the ebb, and under them, in the dark, the small armored faithful move along the bottom, keeping station, as the singing of the priests comes down through the water, which carries sound, as every drowned soldier knows, better than air ever did. There is no menace anywhere in this story to keep you from sleep, only the long, strange faithfulness of the world, that a grief can be honored for 7 centuries by fishermen throwing back crabs, that pride can shrink itself small enough to be loved, that somewhere tonight, under dark water, an old scowling loyalty is still on patrol so that a child emperor need never be alone. Let them keep the watch, then, they have never once asked for relief, and let every drowned and sunken thing in your own day settle to its quiet bottom, where the light is green and the lanterns of the living pass over like slow stars. The tide is turning in the straits now, as it has turned 20,000 times since the battle, and the small sentries lean into it, holding their ground, holding their faces, holding the fort. The watch is kept. It was always kept. You may stand down. Sleep well. The story of the crabs of the Heike is told. One more candle goes out. 13 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 7. At Yaidzu, the swimmer among the dead. Our 7th story is a true one, as true as anything in our 100 Nights, for the man it happened to wrote it down himself. It is the last chapter of Hearn's in ghostly Japan, and it tells of the night he went swimming among the dead. It is called, simply, At Yaidzu. Yaidzu was a fishing town on the Pacific shore where Hearn spent his summers, a rough, warm-hearted place of net-menders and deep-sea men, where he lodged over a fisherman's shop and was known to everyone as the foreign teacher who swam like a local. And he was there, one year, for the 3 nights of Bon, the festival of the dead, when all Japan lights lanterns to guide the ancestors home, feasts them for 3 days, and then, on the last night, sends them back. At Yaidzu the sending back was done by sea. On the last night of Bon, the families of the town brought their little lantern boats to the shore, tiny vessels of straw and paper, each with its light, each loaded with small offerings and the name of the household's dead, and set them on the ebb tide. And the dead, everyone understood, boarded their boats and sailed, out into the dark Pacific, back to their own country, in a fleet of small fires. It was very beautiful, and no one wept much. They would be back next year. It was more like seeing relatives to the station. Now, on that shore there was a rule, and everyone knew it: you do not swim on the last night of Bon. The sea belongs to the dead that night. The fleet is underway. A living body in that water is, at best, in the road. The fisherman, who feared nothing with a hole under it, would not have waded to the knee that night. And Hearn, who loved rules about the invisible world with a scholar's love, and broke them with a small boy's, stood on the beach in the dark, watching the lantern fleet dwindle seaward in long wavering lines of gold, and could not bear it, and undressed, and swam out. Quietly, so the town would not know its teacher was disgracing himself, straight out, into the warm black water, along the road of the dead. He swam until the shore lights were low stars behind him, out among the drifting lanterns, and this is the passage men have loved for a century. They came by him one after another, the little boats, riding the long smooth swells, each with its trembling flame, each with its freight of names, moving all together on the ebb with a purpose no current fully explained. He rested in the water and let them pass. He touched one, very gently, with one finger, begging its passenger's pardon, and felt, he says, exactly what one feels touching the elbow of a stranger in a crowd, a presence, courteous and preoccupied, going home. And around him in the dark, in that warm sea full of small fires, Hearn, who had doubted every doctrine of every faith on 3 continents, found himself, he writes, entirely unafraid, and entirely alone. The sea felt inhabited the way a lit house feels inhabited, friendly, busy, full of family. If these are the dead, he remembers thinking, then the dead are what the living become when all the noise is done, little lights, going somewhere definite, in company. And he turned at last and swam back, slowly, apologizing his way through the fleet, and stood on the sand a long time, salt and shivering and strangely comforted, watching the lights go out one by one over the curve of the world. He confessed the swim, eventually, to an old fisherman he trusted, expecting scolding, and got instead the most Yaidzu of answers. The old man was quiet a while, mending his net, and then said, "They would not have minded you. You are far from your own country too. They would have taken you for one of them, a little early, and made room." And Hearn, who had been an orphan and an exile his whole wandering life, wrote that no cathedral had ever said anything half so kind to him. He died a few summers later, in Japan, a Japanese citizen, with a Japanese name, and at Yaidzu they still tell it, that at the next Bon after his death, the household he had lodged with set out one extra lantern boat, unasked, with his name on it in their best writing, and that it rode the ebb, they swear, more steadily than any boat that night, straight out along the golden road, like a man who had rehearsed, like a swimmer who finally knew the way. Every year since, all along the coasts of Japan, the little fleets still sail on the last night of Bon, millions of lights down the centuries, and not one of them ever reported lost. It is the gentlest doctrine humanity has produced, that the dead are family on a schedule, that they come when called and leave when lighted, and that the sea between the worlds is warm, and busy, and safe enough, on the right night, with the right heart, even to swim in. You are on that sea every night, whether you swim or sleep, everyone is. It is the sea the day's lights sail out on, and tonight it is full of bondboats. Every kindness you were shown today, every face you remembered, every small flame of a thought, riding the ebb out into the dark with a purpose no current explains. Let them pass, one after another, on the long smooth swells. Touch one, gently, if you like, and beg its pardon, and then turn for shore, which is your pillow, and let the tide do the rest. The fleet knows the way. It has never lost a light yet. Sleep well. The story of Yaidzu, the swimmer among the dead, is told. One more candle goes out. 12 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 8. Fragment, the Mountain of Skulls. Our 8th story is the shortest in all our 100 nights. Hearn placed it first in ghostly Japan and called it only Fragment, as if he had found it broken off some enormous older thing. It can be told in a few minutes. It has lasted in every mind that ever heard it. Here it is, nearly whole. And it was at the hour of sunset, so the fragment begins, that they came to the foot of the mountain. There was in that place no sign of life, neither token of water, nor trace of plant, nor shadow of flying bird, nothing but desolation rising to desolation. And the summit was lost in heaven. Then the Bodhisattva said to his young companion, "What you have asked to see will be shown to you. But the place of the vision is far, and the way is rude. Follow after me, and do not fear, strength will be given you." And they began to climb, and the twilight came, and deepened, and there was no path. And the young pilgrim, feeling the way with his feet in the dark, noticed that the mountain did not feel like rock. Whatever he set foot upon rolled slightly, or gave with a dry crackling, and whatever his hands grasped to steady himself was smooth, and rounded, and light. And he asked no questions, because the dark asked them all for him. And the moon rose. And the young pilgrim looked, and saw that the thing beneath his hands was a skull. And the slope above him was skulls, and the slope below him was skulls, moon-white to the limit of sight in every direction, and the mountain itself, from the desolate plain to the summit lost in heaven, the whole titanic mass of it, was nothing, had never been anything, but skulls of men. Out of the horror of it he cried to his guide, "I am afraid. Master, where are we?" And the Bodhisattva, climbing calmly above him in the moonlight, answered, "You are on the mountain of your own skulls. Every one of them was yours. In every one of them you dreamed, and desired, and feared, exactly as you dream and desire and fear tonight. They are the lives you have already lived, my son, the bodies you have already worn out and laid down, birth after birth after birth, since time without beginning. Climb, and do not fear. Not one of them was ever the end of you." That is the whole fragment. Hearn adds not one word of comfort or explanation, he simply sets it at the front of his book of ghosts, like a gate, before you fear any of the small spirits within. Reader, here is the true scale of the thing. And yet, sit with it a moment, here in the warm dark, and feel what the young pilgrim must have felt on the far side of the terror. Every skull was his. Which means, every one of them, he survived. The mountain that looked like death piled to heaven was, examined closely, the opposite. It was a record of continuings. 10,000 times, says the mountain, you have laid down everything you were, your face, your name, your dearest fears, the very skull that held them, and 10,000 times, the essential traveler stepped out of it and went on climbing. The most terrifying vision in Buddhist literature is, on its reverse face, the most stupendous reassurance ever offered to an insomniac. You have already died more times than there are stars visible tonight, and here you still are, warm, breathing, mildly worried about tomorrow. The old teachers used the fragment exactly this way. What you fear losing, they would say, you have lost 10,000 times, youth, loves, homes, whole selves, whole skulls, and the loss has never once managed to be final. So hold tonight's self a little more lightly. It is a good one, be kind to it, walk it up its mountain, but it is one bead on a very long string, and the string does not break where the beads end. And notice, last of all, the tenderest detail, easy to miss in the moonlight, the guide. The pilgrim does not climb the terrible mountain alone. Someone who has passed this way before climbs just ahead, calm in the dark, saying the only two things that have ever needed saying on any hard ascent, follow after me, and strength will be given you. Every tradition on earth has its version of that voice. Tonight it can simply be this one, at the end of a long season of stories, climb easy. Not one of them was ever the end of you. Sleep, the old teachers also said, is the nightly rehearsal of that laying down. Every evening you set the day's self on the pile, whole and finished, and every morning something continuous steps out and puts on the new one. You have done it thousands of times flawlessly. You are about to do it again. So lay it down now, the day, the face it wore, the small dear worried skull of it, on the great pale mountain of everything you have already survived. The moon is on the slopes. The guide is just ahead. And the summit, lost in heaven, will keep until morning, it always has. Sleep well. The story of Fragment, the Mountain of Skulls is told. One more candle goes out. 11 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 9. Tanabata, the Weaver Star. Our 9th story is written across the sky, and has been for longer than Japan has had writing. On any clear night of the year you can look up and see its 3 characters still in place, the star Vega, the star Altair, and between them the long bright river of the Milky Way. It is the legend of Tanabata, the Weaver Star, and Hearn told it in the last year of his life, in the last book he ever wrote. In the high country of heaven, on the far bank of the river of stars, lived Orihime, the weaver maiden, daughter of the Sky King himself. She wove the robes of the gods and the brocades of the seasons, the mists of spring, the deep blue silks of summer night, the gold tissue of autumn, all of it came from her loom, and she was never idle, and never unhappy, for she had never yet looked up from her work. And on the near bank of the river, among the star fields, lived Hyakumonogatari, the oxherd, a broad-shouldered, good-hearted young god who drove the celestial cattle along the shining shallows. And the Sky King, who loved his tireless daughter and thought she deserved some happiness, arranged for them to meet, and they met, and heaven found out what happens when two people who have never been idle discover each other. Everything stopped. The loom stood silent, the gods, the old texts complain with a straight face, went ragged, the seasons came out threadbare that year. The cattle of heaven wandered untended through the star fields, trampling the young constellations. The lovers saw nothing, heard nothing, tended nothing, they walked the river bank hand in hand from moonrise to moonrise, in that first total weather of love, and the whole sky's economy quietly collapsed around them. And the Sky King, who had wanted his daughter happy, not heaven derelict, did the hard thing kings and fathers do. He set the two of them apart, one on each bank of the river of stars, that torrent of 100,000,000 suns, which no bridge spans and no ferry crosses, and decreed, "You shall meet one night in the year. The 7th night of the 7th month. If, and heaven heard the condition, if the work is done." And here the legend turns from a romance into the thing that made a whole civilization love it. Orihime went back to her loom. Not sulking, not broken, she wove as no one had ever woven, and the robes of the gods were never so fine as after her sorrow, for now there was longing in the thread. And Hyakumonogatari drove his cattle so faithfully that the star fields shone fat and ordered. They turned the separation itself into their gift to each other, a year of perfect work, offered across the river, and heaven, watching, learned the lesson the Sky King had perhaps intended all along, that love does not excuse us from our looms. It is what we bring to them. And on the 7th night of the 7th month, if the sky is clear, the magpies come. From every corner of heaven they rise, 10,000 of them, and spread their wings side by side across the river of stars, making a living bridge, and Orihime crosses on the backs of birds, running, her years longing loose behind her like unspooled silk, and on the far bank the oxherd is waiting, as he has waited 364 nights, and for one night the two brightest stars of the summer sky stand together, and every loom and herd in heaven keeps respectful silence. But if it rains that night, and this is the detail that has wrung Japanese hearts for 1,000 years, the river rises, the magpies cannot bridge it, and the meeting waits a whole year more. And so, from ancient times, all Japan has watched the weather on Tanabata Eve like a nation of anxious relatives, and children still hang wishes on bamboo branches that night, written on strips of colored paper, because it is well known that Orihime, on her way to the bridge, is the most generous being in heaven and will grant nearly anything, and if it rains, the old people console the children, and themselves. Never mind. The stars are patient. Look how patient. Be like the stars. Hearn, dying gently in Tokyo the year he wrote it, said the legend had come to seem to him the truest picture of human love ever drawn, not the meeting, which is one night, but the two banks, and the river, and the work. All lovers, he wrote, all friends, all parents and children, live on opposite banks of some river or other, of miles, of years, of mortality itself, and the faithful ones do what the stars do, they keep their side bright. They weave, they tend, they trust the 7th night. The bridge of birds, he said, is real, and everyone has stood on it. It is every reunion you have ever run toward across any distance. And the river between the banks, remember, is not darkness, look at it, some clear night. It is made entirely of light. What separates the weaver from the oxherd is 100,000,000 suns. The old sky tellers meant something by that. What lies between us and everyone we long for is not empty and not cruel, it is bright and deep and crossable, on the appointed nights, by wings. The two stars are up there right now, above your roof, above the rain if there is rain. Vega bright at her loom, Altair steady among his herds, the great river shining between them, the most patient couple in the universe, keeping their sides bright, counting toward the seventh night. No one in the whole sky is anxious. It is the calmest love story ever told, and it is told nightly, overhead, for free. Keep your side bright, then, and let the counting happen by itself. Every sleep is one night closer to every bridge. Hang your wish on the bamboo, the weaver reads them all on her way past, and let the magpies rest their wings till they are wanted. The loom of the sky is working softly now, weaving the one cloth that has never once torn, this night, this dark, this rest, thread after silver thread. Lie still and be woven in. Sleep well. The story of Tanabata, the weaver star, is told. One more candle goes out. 10 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 10. The Fireflies of the Uji River. Our last story tonight drifts on a summer river. Hearn gathered it, with a whole book's worth of firefly lore, in his essay called simply Fireflies, and at the heart of it is the loveliest haunted idea in Japan, that the fireflies of certain rivers are not insects at all. They are armies. You must know first how Japan loved its fireflies. Whole towns emptied on June evenings to watch them, boats pulled slowly up the dark rivers, hung with reed cages, poets bankrupted the language on them. Firefly viewing was a season of the heart, like blossom viewing, except that blossoms are rooted and calm, and fireflies are restless, urgent, searching, and the old people, watching those thousands of cold small fires hunting up and down the reeds, asked the natural question of a haunted civilization, searching for what? And at the river Uji, near the old capital, they had the answer. For at Uji, on certain nights in the height of summer, the fireflies do something recorded nowhere else on earth. They rise from both banks at once, in two vast luminous swarms, and meet above the middle of the river, and clash. Great silent whirling collisions of light, thousands upon thousands of sparks grappling and streaming and falling to the water together, so thick that the river runs fire for an hour, and then nothing, the survivors scatter, the current carries the fallen away in long dimming galaxies, and the night is only a summer night again. The people of Uji have never called it a mating swarm. It has had one name for 700 years, the Firefly Battle. Hataru Kasen, and everyone has always known which battle. For Uji was a battlefield, twice, at the two ends of the same great war that gave us the Heike crabs and blind Hoichi. On that river the first blood of the Genji Heike war was shed, warriors in their thousands fighting waist deep in the current, and every summer since, say the people of Uji, on the anniversary nights, the two armies rise again, the Genji fireflies from one bank, white gold, the Heike fireflies from the other, it is said, with the faintest red in their fire, and they meet above the river where they died, and fight their battle through, and fall, and the river carries the fallen lights down toward the sea, exactly as it carried the fallen men. It should be a terrible legend, and instead, and everyone who has stood on the Uji Bridge on a battle night agrees, it is one of the most beautiful sights in the world. Because this is what 700 years does to a war, in the Japanese imagination, it refines it. The rage cools into ritual, the agony becomes choreography, the armies that once broke each other's bodies in the brown water now meet as weightless sparks, do their whole battle without one wound, and fall as light, onto water, in front of families eating sweets on the bank. The children cheer both sides. Vendors sell cakes. The war that destroyed a dynasty has become, at last, an entertainment for its descendants, gentle as fireworks. No monument of stone ever disarmed a war so completely. Hearn, standing on that bridge, drew the thought out further, in the way he had. Perhaps, he wrote, this is what all our battles come to, given time enough, every human fury, every clash that seems world-ending in its hour, cooling era by era into something small and luminous and harmless, a story told with lights. If the great war of the Heike could become an evening of fireflies, then perhaps nothing we suffer keeps its teeth forever, perhaps time is not the destroyer the poets call it, but the great gentler of things, patiently turning armies into sparks. And the fireflies themselves, mind you, know nothing of any of it. That is the secret tenderness at the bottom of the legend, and the old people knew it perfectly well. The little creatures rise from the reeds on their own small errands of light, live their 10 summer nights, and are gone, and the meaning is laid over them, gently, by the living, like a silk cloth over a sleeping child. Let these be our warriors, let the battle be finished this way, softly, annually, forever. The haunting at Uji is not something the dead do to the living. It is something the living do for the dead, the kindest thing, maybe. They keep refighting the old sorrow in the language of beauty, until no one can remember it any other way. There is an old custom, on the Firefly rivers, for the end of the evening, as the lights thin out and the boats turn home, you catch one firefly, just one, in your cupped hands, and you whisper into the warm dark of your fists the name of someone you have lost, and open your hands. And the small light rises, blinking, unhurried, carrying the name up over the black water, and the children are told, and believe, and are right to believe, it will be delivered. The rivers of Japan have been carrying such mail for 1,000 years, and none of it has ever come back marked unknown. The battle is over for tonight at Uji. It always ends well before midnight, even phantom armies keep gentle hours now, and the river is carrying the last of the fallen lights down through the dark countryside, past the sleeping towns, out toward the sea where all the old wars are stored, fathoms deep and finally quiet. And one firefly, yours, there is always one, has risen from your own cupped hands with its small mail of names, and is climbing the summer air right now, blink by blink, patient as a star being born. It knows the address. It has made the trip before. So close your hands empty, and your eyes with them. The reeds are dark, the boats are home, the water runs smooth and unlit to the sea. Whatever armies you brought to this evening have all turned to sparks and gone downstream, and the night above the river is enormous, and mild, and full of delivered messages. Sleep well. The story of the fireflies of the Uji River is told. The last of tonight's candles goes out. 9 remain, waiting for another night. And so 10 more candles have gone out, and only 9 remain, glowing softly in the dark. 9 small flames, 9 stories left in the 100, one more night, you and I, and the game is done. The crane has flown, forgiven. The mirror is bright with a beloved face. The fireflies have drifted down the river, and over it all the weaver and the herdsman keep their patient stations, one on each side of the shining river of stars. We never tell the 100th story. The last candle is still burning, and it will keep burning, all through the night, for you. The last candle returns tomorrow, for the final night of our season. 9 stories, down to the very last flame. But that is for another night. For now, sleep well.